This coming Tuesday, all across our great nation, we will be called upon to do our civic duty by voting in what is called the midterm elections, national, state, local. We will be asked to vote for candidates, as I say, for these various levels of government. And we will also be asked to vote on local proposals on various bond issues. As Catholics, we are called to engage in our world. So often you remember we're sent after Mass to be engaged, to get involved, to bring the good news of Jesus. And so we're engaged in the world as part of what is being a Catholic, to work toward a society where we can all experience the love of God and live out that love in our lives. This call extends to our home, to our workplace, to our community, and also it calls us in the political process. So on Tuesday, we will have the opportunity to engage in the world by participating in these midterm elections. In order to best promote justice, peace, and human dignity as Catholics, we should prayerfully reflect upon the scriptures and on the social teachings of the Church as we go to cast our votes, to make our public statement of what we believe is best for our communities. And I would hope that when we do that we don't leave our Christian values, our church values behind us, but rather that they motivate us to make the decisions that we choose to make, that they be based on good gospel principles. Sadly, every day we are experiencing, as we well know, a very troubled world. There is so much violence, so much division, so much mistrust, and so much fear. We all want to see a better world, no matter what party we are, what persuasion we may be, we all want a better world. We may have our differences in how to make that world better, what needs to be done to make that world better. But I think we can all agree we have a long way to go to make this a better world. I think today in the gospel, Jesus gives us the key to a better world when he responds to the question of the scribe in the gospel, which is the first of all the commandments? What should we really be doing? What should be the foundational thing that we should be doing in living our faith? And Jesus responded, you shall love the Lord your God, all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. By joining these two commandments, one from the book of Deuteronomy, the other part, to love our neighbor, from the book of Leviticus, together, Jesus seems to be saying, neither can stand alone. There's an old song went one time, and I was going to have Brad sing it tonight, okay? But, you know, the old song, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. And yet that's so true of these two commandments. They go together. Neither can stand alone. In other words, we can't love our neighbor without loving God. And we certainly cannot love God without loving our neighbor. The two are joined together very intimately. We might want to ask the question, why is it impossible to love God without loving our neighbor? The answer, I think, is simple. Unless we're willing to love our neighbor, unless we're willing to give ourselves in service to those in need, unless we're willing to reach out in generosity and sacrifice to others, our love of God becomes almost hypocritical. If we are unable to love those around us, our prayer to God and our love to God becomes empty. If we are unwilling to give of ourselves to others, then our love of God is merely a matter of words and pious practices. It might make us feel real good, but it has no substance. It is not really based on reality, because we go out in our world, and that's where we practice our love of God. The first letter of John tells us that those who say they love God but hate their brothers and sisters, he uses a strong word. He says they're liars. Because how could they say they love God who they cannot see and at the same time refuse to love their brothers and sisters who they do see? Love of God without love of neighbor becomes empty. Another question then might be, why is love of neighbor without love of God deficient? Why do we need to love God if we are truly going to love our neighbor? The answer is this, I believe. Love of God gives us the freedom to love others when it is difficult, even when it is not practical. No one in our Christian faith thinks it's easy to love our neighbor. That's tough, because we're all different personalities. We all come from different places, and we're all kind of wounded and weird. And so we get into that sometimes where we really find that difficult. It is easy to love those who love us in return. That's always easy. But how can we love those who hurt us, maybe disagree with us, that we can call our enemies? We cannot love them for their sake, but we can love them for God's sake. We can love them because we love God. Why would one go to visit, for an example, their grandmother with Alzheimer's? She does not even know who you are. You do not go to visit her for her sake. You visit her for God's sake, because that's what God would do. It is your love of God that motivates you to visit even when she cannot realize that you're even there. That's true love. When we can do those things motivated by that love of God. The love of God gives us the ability to love others, even when that love is not reciprocated. Our Jewish brothers and sisters call this kind of loving a mitzvah. It means it is commanded. We do it because God expects it of us. God expects that of his children, to be people of love. And we love the God who loves us. This kind of loving is free. It is free from the limitations of strategies and the limitations of success. We love because God asks us to love. And that love is without any strings attached. And so I ask and suggest, as we go to vote Tuesday, I pray we will ask ourselves how the candidates that we plan to vote for, the policies that we may support through our vote, do they reflect the great commandment to love God and to love our neighbor? Only when our world returns to living these great commandments will we ever end the violence, the division, the mistrust, and fear that separates us. It may sound naive, but maybe Tuesday when we approach the voting place, we need to seriously ask ourselves, how would Jesus vote?